Welcome to a conversation on Enterprise Edge. My name is Dan Demers. I'm Vice President of Sales with Technology Business Research. I'm joined today by Nikki Catchpole, a senior analyst inside the cloud practice here at TBR, and one of the principal analysts responsible for Enterprise Edge. Nikki, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
So, TBR, we've launched a research stream in Edge for Enterprise Edge, February of 2020. Tell us a little bit about why Enterprise Edge and why now?
Yes, so we're very excited about this new research stream as part of both our cloud practice in conjunction with our data center practice. So this is truly a team effort at TBR, which we're trying to do more often across the board as digital transformation is the main theme, bringing in converging technologies from different groups. Why Enterprise Edge and why in February? Well, it's important to note that TBR has had its eye on Edge in general for a number of years. It's not like Edge is brand new, but it certainly is, as the title of our report says, emerging and evolving. So we started our focus on the Edge with a landscape that came out last year, early 2019, I believe, specifically focused on telco. Telco is a very rich space in Edge. It provided us with a lot of fodder to understand the market more, understand the dynamics, the interlocking technologies, because there are many. And after the launch of that report, we received a lot of positive feedback. Actually launched a second and maybe even a third Telco Edge report, and finally thought that we were poised at a time where it made sense to broaden our coverage out beyond just telco into a plethora of all the different verticals that could possibly fit under the umbrella of what an enterprise would need with relation to Edge.
So you start to frame Enterprise Edge and the landscape that Enterprise Edge enters into in the context of digital transformation.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about how Edge plays a role in broad digital transformation across enterprise?
Yes, absolutely. And this is where it becomes really fascinating. It's not just a conversation about cloud. It's not just a conversation about Edge or on-prem. There's a whole conversation that many companies are undergoing in different phases of where they are in their own digital transformation journey that apply across the board. So you can think of the Edge in terms of the swinging from someone, I like the word pendulum, the swinging of the pendulum from highly centralized when you used to have mainframe servers, and then the pendulum swung to a bunch of different distributed servers. And now we're at the point where there's kind of a combination of both as people are slowly adopting the cloud, some the hybrid cloud with some mix of cloud and on-prem. Some people are still on-prem, and then all of a sudden you get this technology called Edge, which takes the cloud and just disperses it. And it's not like the cloud has been shattered or replaced. It's just a different way to think of how IoT can feed information through the Edge and then ultimately reside in the cloud. So some of these technologies can exist separately. You can still do on-prem and be totally fine. You can still have cloud and be totally fine. I think of Edge as kind of the center of that, where it really brings together all of the data harvested by IoT devices on sensors, takes it, analyzes it, and introduces a lot of the concerns, or relieves a lot of the concerns that people have around latency. So that's kind of the connection between IoT and Edge. The connection between Edge and cloud is when you get to the longer term analytical capabilities. The cloud takes a bunch of information, a lot of it can be irrelevant, and stores it, and in theory analyzes it and processes it. And what the Edge does is take away a lot of the, I guess you can call it junk, data that would ultimately end up in the cloud, and is able to parse out what is relevant. So what the cloud has to work with, to analyze and to store, is much more focused and much more relevant to what companies need.
So as you start to describe kind of the overall ecosystem from cloud to enterprise to Edge, with IoT kind of being the connecting tissue, how is it that TBR defines Edge? This constantly becomes a question I hear from whether it's some of the largest global OEMs, some of our GSI partners. What's the taxonomy around which we place Edge in context?
Sure, the TBR taxonomy is kind of rare, and some people really love how we've done this, and some people really disagree. But it wasn't intentional to incite debate, but we are, for the Enterprise Edge report, we piggybacked on how we defined it with the telco edge, because we really wanted both groups to align in how TBR as a whole thinks of edge. And so what we've done is define it in terms of the far edge network, which is anything that is processed within 30 miles of the actual data input source. So when we size the market, that's what we're thinking of within that kind of confined, extremely latency sensitive box. But we recognize that there are many inputs and many additional factors that exist outside of that one particular radius.
So when you think through the lens of that taxonomy or that definition, what are the kinds of use cases? And as you conducted the research to publish in February this inaugural report, what are the readers, what are the users of our research going to find in that report?
Yeah, so use cases is actually where I get really excited. I'm not a technologist by background, I'm more of a consumer by background. So this is where it really comes to life, at least for me. And I've heard similar feedback from many other people. And the use cases are literally in the hundreds. And people, the automobile one is a really easy one. I know it's kind of an old one, so I apologize to some people who gave us that feedback, but it's easy to relate to in that when thinking of the spectrum of the benefits that the edge brings, it ranges from super low latency, so low delay, all the way to the benefits of really intense high analytics. So if you're using the car example, if you're in a car and you have an edge sensor on the car and the car detects something running across the street, you will have that immediate reaction that edge sensor has prevented you from having a collision. And then if you swing all the way to the other side of the spectrum, to the analytics, still using the car example, you could have edge sensors all around a city that are taking advantage of being able to see different traffic patterns. And there might be a certain road where there's always accidents or always skidding. Over time, those sensors will collect that information, analyze it, and can report it back to, say, a police station or, say, city planning. So that type of accident pattern doesn't continue.
Are there other, as you mentioned, right? A lot of folks are familiar with the autonomous vehicle use case. What are some of the more cutting edge or exciting use cases you have uncovered?
Yeah, so if you want to get out of the automobile area or manufacturing floor, I mean, those are all ones that are kind of rubber stamped versions of themselves. I start to think of ones that are relevant to, again, like the consumer eye. So retail is one. As we all know, I'm one of the people who is my habits are governed by Amazon Prime. And a lot of brick and mortar stores have been obviously closing down and really hurting because of this online trend. So in response to this, what a lot of them have started to do is implement edge technology within the walls of their actual sites. So this could range from anything from like a shop robot who can analyze you, take in your preferences, and suggest where you should go to find whatever you may be looking for. There have been certain examples I've heard that are pretty cool of like AR, VR in the dressing room where you can try on, so you're going on a vacation to Turks and Caicos and you want to try on a bathing suit, but you don't want to do it in the harsh light of the changing room, which no one likes to do that. You can actually, with AR, VR, pretend like you're in Turks and Caicos and see what you would look like, with a cocktail under a palm tree.
Fantastic.
So those are some of the near immediate examples of how kind of the on-sensor edge devices are helping consumers. Edge devices also over longer terms. I mean, when it comes to holiday shopping patterns or just daily patterns of consumer traffic, like what ads are drawing people into certain stores, what ads are deterring people, when are the peak hours. When is a good time to clean the floors because there's not many people around, but you still need to keep the shops open. So that's an example of longer term analytics being applied into a retail setting as well.
Excellent. So some of the hallmarks that our customers have continually given us feedback on is, even with really good thought leadership, TBR tends to anchor even market landscapes with a little bit of quantitative data. So when a reader opens up the Enterprise Edge market landscape, what kind of quantitative data can they find?
The intent of the market landscapes, and if you're familiar with TBR reports, analytics really is at the backbone of much of what we do with our vendor reports and with our benchmarks. Market landscapes, that's not really the case. We do have a very high level market forecast view of where we perceive the edge to grow and particularly uptick, especially with the advent of 5G, for instance. As that comes onto the horizon, that will certainly impact the rapid growth, or what we perceive will be the rapid growth of edge. But we tended to focus much more on the qualitative aspects, such as the definition, the use cases, and also the vendor profiles. So those were really the core parts of what we focus on the market landscape. And what the market landscape is supposed to do is really whet people's appetite to learn more. And we would love to provide more quantitative information down the road. We're trying to get a pulse on the market of, are people responding positively or negatively to how we're reporting on the edge? And if so, what is that feedback? How can we as a firm analyze the edge more effectively and bring in more of our vendors' feedback from what they're seeing in the market? There's only 60 eyes here at TBR, but there's many more out there in the world that we speak to all the time.
Absolutely. Is there anything, I know one of the things that we often will cover is services, right? So is there a services angle, or with respect to use cases, does the landscape start to talk about services or managed services with respect to edge?
The landscape itself does not really dig deeply into services, but as you opened with the discussion on digital transformation, and that's really where the services play comes in.
Okay.
Because someone adopting edge or cloud or engaging in any aspect of that journey from on-prem to wherever it is that they forecasted, it's not like you just buy the cloud and someone shows up with a cloud and drops it on your door and says, here you go. Same thing with the edge. Both of these, and in tandem with one another, should someone choose to adopt them both, require a huge amount of oversight, management. A lot of the hesitance into adopting either is just the pure manpower and that is needed in order to do so. And also the decisions that need to be made. Like, when is it right for a company to allocate that much budget to adopting this technology that will fundamentally shape how they do business? They're not just buying a singular solution, they're buying into the future of their company. So without someone like a services angle, like a services provider, to try and do that blindly on your own, and some companies do that, would be immensely difficult and pose a lot of challenges when it comes to security as well as just general management, especially at the edge when the edge is dispersion everywhere. How do you manage, tens of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of, inputs?
So part of the research that you and the team conducted, you had to have encountered a variety of vendors. Who were some of the folks that you encountered through the research?
We did, and it was actually really difficult to narrow down because there are so many. But we started with about 10 or 11, and we made sure that our coverage wasn't just cloud or wasn't just data center or hardware. So there was really a mix of a few. From the data center perspective, Equinix and Digital Realty were a couple that we covered. We also went over IBM, AWS, Microsoft, and Huawei. Those are just a few that come to mind.
Excellent.
And in conjunction with those vendors, there were a couple of things that we highlighted that I think is worth mentioning. One in particular that I also highlighted on our webinar is some of the more recent developments, particularly IBM's launch of an automated solution that, if you kind of harken back to what I was saying with the whole management of digital transformation and how services are really integral, and because it is such a heavy lift that goes over a period of years and is maybe ongoing forever in some ways, if you can automate some of those tasks and take some of the people out of the field having to manage all this dispersion, then that really saves a lot of capital and makes the process much more efficient and saves a lot of money. So IBM has launched an automated solution, I believe, just last month. So I'm really excited to see where that goes and how that impacts the marketplace, and what other vendors do in response.
It sounds like it's only going to get more complex, and we continue to get question after question. Before we wrap up, with respect to readers out there who are currently subscribing or perhaps would like to subscribe, how might they get in touch or perhaps reach in to inquire more about Enterprise Edge?
That is extremely simple. My contact details will be provided at the end of this conversation, as well as my colleague Stephanie Long's. You are welcome to reach out to either of us directly, and we would be happy to engage in any feedback, any updates. We're really focused on kind of bringing the community more tightly into our reporting, and the feedback is truly invaluable from whatever we receive, and we're open to it. So please, we encourage people to get in touch with us.
Fantastic. Well, Nikki, thanks so much for sitting down. This has been a conversation on Enterprise Edge with senior analyst Nikki Catchpole. Again, I'm Dan Demers. Thanks for watching.